As a Glaswegian, it's terrifying. It is not a safe place to be. Particular areas of the city are no-go zones for many, many different people. The city is lawless. John Swinney calling me racist or far-right means nothing to me. They hate me with a passion as it is anyway, so Glasgow is an international city. All eyes are always on us. The Commonwealth Games obviously brought people to our city, but I don't think that we were showing the best of our city. And the fact that they're filming Batman, you really couldn't write it, because Glasgow is very similar to Gotham in many different ways. Some better than others right now. So I suspect that the creators of Batman will be quite happy, because they might not have to build as many props considering the state that the city's currently in. So, having him here to try and fix the issues might be quite good, because the city is definitely needing it. As a Glaswegian, it's terrifying and it's heartbreaking, and it's something I've been speaking about for months. And any time that I raised it, I was called, racist. I was, scapegoated, attacked, said I was scaremongering people, all this sort of stuff, because I was saying that the city is lawless. And when I done my walkabout, it was a good few weeks ago now, and we witnessed exactly what the BBC had witnessed when they done theirs. So I was very glad of the BBC for going out and doing that. It's terrifying for many, many people walking through our city centre at the moment. It is not a safe place to be. Particular areas of the city are no-go zones for many, many different people, and particularly later on at night. And I think that what the BBC done was highlight that on a much bigger scale. And it's a weakness of the political establishment and the political leaders that we still to hear anything of substance from them about what we witnessed. Because when I was out, certainly I was out for half an hour, 45 minutes doing a walkabout, I personally witnessed 4 people injecting themselves with heroin. I personally witnessed a drug deal take place in front of my face. I personally witnessed people who were jumping and fighting with each other. One of my team was threatened when he was out walking with us because he was standing with me walking. And the other one that we witnessed was 2 young girls who were about 15 years old being wolf whistled at and ogled. Now, all of those were reported to Police Scotland, but all of them took place within a half an hour timescale that we were out at St Enoch Square in particular. So what the BBC's highlighted is an issue that we in Reform in particular have been highlighting for months. And I just hope that it'll finally put some, responsibility on the political leaders to actually act. I think it really speaks volumes. I really do, because if this had been a perceived far right protest, then Susan Aitken and John Swinney would have been out within seconds putting out a tweet and attacking people for turning up to protest against migration, because that's what they do. But when we see the groups of young thugs hanging around the city centre, it doesn't matter what colour of skin they are, but you see young people hanging about attacking people because of the colour of other people's skin. When you see open drug dealing taking place in the city centre, it's not good enough for Susan Aitken to just say, well, I'm leaving in a couple of weeks' time. I've announced my resignation as leader of Glasgow City Council, so I'm not going to speak to the BBC. It's not good enough for John Swinney to call a round table to discuss with faith leaders how we try and combat violence against women, without acknowledging the fact that Glasgow City Centre is currently unsafe for many young women to go around and do their own business, to go out on a night out. It's no longer safe for them to be out and about and be seen in the city. That is not good enough, and politicians need to start speaking about this, because when they remain silent, they're letting down the city and they're letting down Glaswegians, and it's a failure directly at them, because it's their policies that have implemented the situation we're now seeing in Glasgow. Well, there's a couple of things we need to do. Firstly is we need to put proper funding into Police Scotland. I don't blame police officers and frontline staff for what's going on in our city. The police don't have the ability, the funding, or the manpower to be able to do any sort of meaningful action inside the city centre, and that's why we're seeing loads of issues kicking up, particularly at St Enoch Square. There's also a mindset in Police Scotland that if you were to act, then you could be perceived as racist, you could be attacked as being far right, you could be attacked as being part of the establishment, because also it takes us somebody to pull out a camera. So we need to back the police 100%, and Reform in our manifesto signed up to all of the police federation's asks, including giving all officers tasers to give them support. So that would be the first thing. Second thing I think you need to try and do is you need to try and restore some sort of order into the city centre, and that means lighting the place properly, that means tidying the place up, that means investing in the city centre, and that means making sure that CCTV cameras are operational and are used 24/7 in our city centre. Right now that's not the case, and that has to happen. And we also need to see lighting being put in, particularly of alleyways right across the city, where we're seeing loads of women in particular now terrified to walk past in case something happened. And the last thing I want to see happen, and this is a UK government issue rather than a Scottish government issue, but I want to see mass migration end, and I want to see deportations of people who are here illegally and sent out of the country. And any foreign national who is seen to commit a crime in the way in which we have seen repeatedly happen in our city, they shouldn't be housed in Scottish prisons. It shouldn't be up to Scottish taxpayers to be having to fund those places. They should be deported out of the country and back to where they came from. So that's the 3 things I think that we need to try and see happen straight away. And if the government, both Labour and SNP government ministers, get to grips with that, we'll start to see the city centre slowly start to recover. But until you do that, then we're going to see this steep decline continue to happen.
At the same time as I was condemning it, Thomas Kerr, sitting beside Mr Offord, was saying to people that it was important that people went out and protested last night. At the same time, I was making it abundantly clear that nobody in the current context, although they've got democratic rights, nobody should be out protesting last night, given the climate that we're in. That was my advice, for people not to protest. Mr Kerr said people should get out and protest. And what happened last night? Well, in Greenock, a town very close to Mr Offord's heart, I know that, police officers were attacked. 2 officers sustained minor injuries and damage was caused to police vehicles as the police were simply doing their duty of protecting the citizens of our country, and Mr Offord should condemn his colleague Thomas Kerr right now.
Look, people can attack me for whatever they want to attack me for. I've got Finn as thick as a rhino, so John Swinney calling me racist or far right means nothing to me. I'm a Glaswegian through and through, and I care about this city passionately. I have a young son who's grown up in my city, and I want to make sure that he has a society that he's going to be built in and support as much as he can for getting his future going forward. So I want to see support in our city centre. I won't ever shy away from speaking about the issues that Glaswegians are asking me to speak about. That includes mass migration. That includes people who are coming here illegally. That includes the current system where strangers are being prioritised over people here in Scotland when it comes to housing lists and when it comes to priority and loads of different needs. So people can attack me for whatever they want to attack me for, but it won't ever deter me from saying what I think needs to be said. And as for the idea that I'm rallying up any sort of racial tension, I just don't agree with that. I never mention the colour of people's skins deliberately. The video that I done where we done the walkabout included white guys who were injecting themselves with heroin along with people who were black, who were drug dealing in front of us. There's an issue in the city centre that is not to do with race. It is to do with the fact that poverty still exists, addiction is rife, and that people who have came here illegally have now been prioritised and are using our city centre in such a way. That's a big, big difference from then trying to stoke up racial tensions. And the last thing I'll say is that unless John Swinney takes the concerns of what Glaswegians are saying seriously, then he's playing into the hands of the genuine far-right, people who are genuinely trying to whip up racial hatred, until he gets to grips and admits that there's an issue in Glasgow, until he gets to grips and says that mass migration is pushing us to breaking point, until he starts to accept that Glasgow is currently lawless, then he's going to continually gaslight the public, and all that does is push people into the more extreme side. So I want to try and be somebody in between to take us to a more strengthened position, to make sure that we are building back in social cohesion, but that only happens when you start to deal with the issues that are existing in Glasgow. So look, I don't speak for Darren Docherty or Scott Sacktiff. That's up to them what sort of language they want to use. It's not the language that I would use. I don't think there is a race war. I think there's an issue of predominantly young black men hanging around our city centre who are drug dealing. But I don't think that's a particular race war. I think it's more to do with the fact that we are bringing in people of mass proportions who are where mass migration is pushing our city to breaking point. In terms of the word invasion, it is an invasion. What we're seeing happening down in the south of England, where we're seeing boats after boats arriving, record numbers continuously happening, huge amounts of, every single time I see these dinghies, they seem to get bigger and bigger. So what that is an invasion. That is young men who are coming to our country. We've seen Lee Anderson out in Cali last week, where one of the migrants who were coming here said he's coming to Scotland. He can afford £1,500 to get himself across the English Channel, but he's coming to Edinburgh, that was the exact words that he said. These aren't people who are real asylum seekers. They're not people who are refugees. They're travelling through safe routes right across Europe, coming to the French border and then travelling over the water into England because they see us as a soft touch. They see the UK as an easy place to come, and they're now seeing Scotland in particular as somewhere very easy to come, because if you come to Scotland illegally, not only is Glasgow now the asylum capital because of a Labour government that will refuse to take us off from being a dispersal city, we've also got rid of local connection rules, and if you come here, declare yourselves as homeless, then you're given priority straight away, and that's just not fair. So it's not about a race war, but it is about using language that I think the public understand, and that is that I do think there is an invasion. I do think there are strangers who are coming to our country, and I do think that Glasgow has been pushed to breaking point because of mass migration. Do you know, it's my first time ever been in Belfast, and there are huge similarities, and the pressures that Belfast as a city are facing are very, very similar to some of the pressures that Glasgow's facing. The one difference, though, is that politicians, so I spent, Tuesday with the leaders of the DUP. I was getting a tour around Stormont and Belfast East in particular, which is very, very similar to my community in the East End of Glasgow. The difference, though, was really striking between politicians understanding what's happening in the grounds and happening in their communities in Belfast which does not happen here in Scotland. I cannot tell you a local councillor or an MSP or an MP from another party who actually gets what's going on in Glasgow's working class communities in the way that DUP and other political party leaders get it that's going on in Belfast. And I think that that's meaning it's easier to handle, because if you have people who are sick, fed up and angry with the political establishment, if they're telling you that they feel like their communities have been invaded by people who are being prioritised before them, if they're telling you that immigration is a huge issue, and your reaction is, I actually live in the areas, I understand these communities, and I'm going to take those pressures and those issues back to the legislator, then that can work. But what we're having here in Scotland is politicians who are constantly gaslighting the public. So that was the real big difference from me between Belfast and Glasgow, was how just in touch their politicians seem to be with what's going on in their communities compared to how detached our politicians are. And the last thing is, Belfast city centre is remarkable. The amount of investment that they've had into it is brilliant. The streets are clean. It feels nice. It's nice to walk around in. That cannot be said for the same in Glasgow. And I think that whoever is in administration, whether it be SNP, Labour, Reform, whoever is in charge, they need to make sure that Glasgow city centre is prioritised and invested in, because it's such a great city with so much potential, but it's been let down by the politicians. All I need to do is walk into the chamber and it mixes stuff up. They hate me with a passion as it is anyway. So like, I will go in there, and so will my colleagues, to make sure that the issues that we have learned about over the summer, because obviously I've been a councillor for nearly 10 years, so I know my community. Many of our MSPs are new to politics, so they've spent the summer getting to know local community groups, understanding the pressures that are existing in their community. So we'll take all of those issues back to Holyrood. And the only thing I would say to the First Minister is, if you think there's a countdown clock and because something isn't topical when we go back, don't think that means you're going to hide away from scrutiny, because there's been a number of issues that have happened over the summer that I think this government needs to be held accountable for. And I will be making sure that my voice, Malcolm will be making sure that his voice, and Reform will be making sure that our voices are heard, to make sure that we're pushing those proposals forward. Well, look, the two things that I am really, really concerned about, and that I will push, is firstly to do with the lawlessness in Glasgow. When, before we finished up, I was raising these concerns, and John Swinney personally attacked me at First Minister's questions and, tried to bully me in an instance of saying that this is all on you, trying to spread racial hatred. Well, what we've seen now over the past summer and over the past few months is that this is real in our communities, and I'm speaking for many, many people, so I'll be asking about that. But the other one that I don't want the government to try and hide away from is the huge amount of taxpayers' money that they wasted by giving a donation to Palestine. The Scottish Government has no ability and no support in terms of foreign affairs. That's an issue for the Westminster Government. So why they felt the need to use that money over the summer, where they're not held accountable, where nobody can scrutinise where that money's actually going, and on an issue that is nothing to do with the Scottish Parliament, I think is disgraceful. So I definitely want his answer as to why he felt that was a good use of taxpayers' money. My job is to be a good deputy to Malcolm. Malcolm is not going anywhere. My intention is that Malcolm Offord will be in Butte House in 5 years' time, and I'll be there alongside him. So, I have no ambition other than to stand up for the people of Glasgow and do the job that I'm currently doing. We can now question John Swinney's backbench MSPs, and I look forward to doing that when we get back. And I'll be supporting Malcolm as much as I can to make sure that he gets into Butte House. I'm looking forward to it. Look, I'll be honest, the first 2 months when we first got elected were difficult, because you're walking into a building where you don't really know how the place operates. You don't even know where to get a good cup of coffee, and everybody hates you with a passion. Like, they cannot stand this. And then you get the 2 months off this summer, which has been really useful for me, because I've been in my communities, I've been in my city, I've been hearing people coming up to me who are thanking me for the job I'm doing. So I'm going back a lot more fired up and ready to challenge them. So if they think that I've took the summer to, go and get a suntan and come back all nice and quiet, that's not been the case. I've spent my time with my community, understanding what's going on in working class areas, and I'm more fired up than ever have been to go back and hold them accountable.